Moonlight filtered through ancient fern fronds, casting long, writhing shadows across the damp limestone walls of a cave in the Rift Valley of East Africa, exactly 2.5 million years ago. The stillness of the night was torn apart by the heavy breathing of a group of Australopithecus huddling together for warmth around a dying fire. Amidst the ash, where the final embers were about to fade, a completely anomalous object emerged, one entirely alien to the era. It was neither a sharply chipped flint nor a blood-stained hyena thigh bone, but a flat, pitch-black, glossy, freezing, and inorganic block, a modern smartphone. Its screen suddenly burst into a piercing blue flash, accidentally triggered by some hypothetical quantum anomaly rippling across space and time. The arrival of the first artificial light in human history, a light born neither from chemical combustion nor volcanic lava, instantly commanded the terrified yet curious gaze of the proto-human Alpha. Hesitantly, he reached out calloused, scratched, and hairy fingers to touch the sleek, tempered glass. A light swipe accidentally unlocked the display. Deep within a wild world fraught with danger from packs of Megantherion saber-toothed cats and primordial acid rain, a device holding the entire store of knowledge, binary code, and direct current from the 21st century suddenly rested in the palm of a creature still incomplete in its linguistic evolution. In that exact moment, human history should have veered toward an entirely different path, but the laws of physics, evolutionary biology, and ecology were about to expose a ruthless paradox. High technology does not rescue evolution, it systematically annihilates it. Picture the very first moments when the device emitted its maiden digital sound, a default alarm ringtone piercing the quiet primeval forest. The Australopithecus troop shrieked in panic, flinging branches aside and scrambling frantically up towering baobab trees, mistaking the noise for the roar of an invisible, phantom predator. Yet terror quickly yielded to the exploratory drive of a brain whose cranial capacity was expanding. The most curious member of the group, possessing a brain volume of a mere 450 cubic centimeters, roughly a third of modern human capacity, slid back down to the ground, cautiously approaching the glowing portal. When he inadvertently triggered a short video clip stored in the cache or an audio recording of flowing water, the entire auditory and visual ecosystem of prehistoric times was turned completely upside down. To a creature living purely by acoustic localization, interpreting rustles in the brush to evade enemies, high-fidelity digital audio from a phone speaker was a sorcery defying all biological cognition. It carried no scent, no taste, and no ground vibrations, yet resonated with absolute clarity, as if thousands of tiny entities were hiding inside the aluminum and glass casing. Yet, a smartphone in prehistoric times is not a sacred artifact granting divine power. It is a biological ticking time bomb. The core initial crisis manifests immediately: energy. The lithium-ion battery inside the device, regardless of how optimal its capacity might be, could only operate continuously for a few dozen hours of active screen time, or a few days on standby. With no cellular towers, no national electrical grid, and no renewable energy sources out there capable of supplying a 5-volt direct current to recharge the draining battery, that smart device was ultimately destined to be a brilliant torch that flickered out in a hurry. Within 72 hours, when the screen died permanently from absolute energy depletion, the light that once awed the masters of the savannah vanished, leaving behind a dead, inert brick wedged between river pebbles. Yet the most terrifying aspect was not the dead battery, but the brief window of activity itself. The troop's attention became entirely fixated on the glowing screen. In nature, the survival of a prehistoric primate species depends absolutely on environmental scanning. Sniffing out hyena sweat, detecting subtle light shifts through leaves signaling a giant python, and continuously communicating warning signals both visually and acoustically within the pack. When the phone appeared, it forged the first attention black hole in evolutionary history. The entire troop clustered for hours around the luminous screen, entirely neglecting territorial vigilance. Survival instincts paralyzed by artificial dopamine hits from shifting screen colors, even simple graphic animations or high-resolution still images, succumbed to the spell. In the wild, A distraction lasting mere minutes equates to a death sentence. A leopard of the genus Panthera ascends a tree branch, silently observing a prey group glued to a strange object below, entirely unaware that doom is imminent. That fatal curiosity accelerates the extinction rate of the phone-tending proto-humans exponentially, because nature had never equipped their nervous systems with any defense mechanism against the allure of digital displays. Assuming a miraculous scenario where the device possessed perpetual energy, sustained by a quantum time loop keeping it running indefinitely, human evolutionary trajectory would veer into a deeply haunting and alien branch. Imagine the device not only glowing, but connected to an offline, integrated artificial intelligence, a vast repository of language, technology, and science. When the proto-human touched the screen, the device produced audio and visual simulations of bronze and iron tools, controlled fire-making, architectural construction, and animal domestication. Could a brain with a 450 cubic centimeter volume, lacking fully developed Broca's and Wernicke's areas for complex grammar, absorb 21st century knowledge? Evolutionary biology delivers a cold negative answer. The Australopithecus brain was never engineered to process binary code, advanced mathematics, or artificial grammatical structures. The lines of code, Latin alphabets, and arithmetic symbols glowing on the screen were mere meaningless scribbles to them, akin to beetle claw marks on tree bark. They could not learn from the phone. Instead, they fell victim to reverse domestication. The phone conditioned their behavior through classical conditioning. Much like modern primate screen addiction experiments, blue light and continuous motion stimulated dopamine pathways in the proto-human brain, transforming an active, wide-ranging foraging omnivore into a passive creature glued in place around an artificial light source, abandoning food searches until they starved right beside a machine holding all human knowledge. The narrative expands beyond a single primate group into the macro panorama of the primeval ecosystem. The introduction of an object fashioned from high-tech synthetic materials, polymer plastics, aluminum-lithium alloys, silicate-tempered glass, and microchips containing rare earth elements like neodymium, indium, and gallium, poses a profound geological question. What happens to the device after the early hominids perish, or when it is buried beneath alluvial sediments of Pleistocene floods? Millions of years later, when strata shift, future archaeologists, or modern humans traveling back in time, will unearth a geological anomaly entirely unexplainable by standard stratigraphic evolution models. An alloy and synthetic plastic block embedded deep beneath the fossil layers of Homo habilis and Homo erectus. The presence of this unnatural material in deep strata would utterly shatter standard stratigraphic theories, forcing science to confront the reality that Earth's history is not a linear progression from simple to complex, but may conceal time loops or quantum anomalies absent from theoretical physics equations. Consider further the impact of the chemical components inside the phone upon the primeval environment if its protective casing ruptured and leaked into groundwater. Lead, mercury, cadmium, lithium, and persistent organic compounds. In a primitive stream where prehistoric animals drank daily, heavy metal leakage from the battery and circuit boards would create a severe localized toxicological zone. Primitive catfish and ancient amphibians inhabiting the headwaters would absorb heavy metal ions directly into the food chain. This bioaccumulation would trigger mass micromutations, neurological malformations in subsequent fish generations, reduced fertility in grazing herbivores visiting the stream, and, inadvertently, turning the mobile phone into a toxic agent blunting the local ecosystem before humans could step into the true Old Stone Age. It represents the ultimate historical irony. Humanity's most advanced technology, hurled back to its starting point, acts as a biological poison, destroying the very biological roots that birthed civilization itself. Yet suppose an even more wondrous scenario unfolds. The phone remains undamaged, its battery eternally charged by an unknown energy source, and a mutant Homo erectus, slightly more evolved than Australopithecus, boasting a brain volume of roughly 900 cubic centimeters, uses stone tools to intentionally or accidentally interact with the touch sensors. What happens to the psyche of a creature realizing that the glossy black glass reflects its own face? For millions of years, no creature on Earth had ever beheld a high-definition reflection of itself. save for the blurred mirror of a calm lake. When a Homo erectus witnessed his own angular brow, flat forehead, rugged brow ridges, and wild gaze sharply displayed on an OLED screen with absolute contrast, a shattering psychological revolution would erupt within his minimalist neural structure. That marked the sudden, painful birth of the ego, the conscious awareness of an individual self distinct from the pack and surrounding nature. In nature, animals act via pack instincts and genetic code. They lack concepts of independent self-awareness until undergoing excruciatingly slow social evolution spanning hundreds of thousands of years. This forced digital reflection acted as an overwhelming cognitive shock to an unready brain. The proto-human would experience a state of collective paranoia, viewing the screen reflection as a trapped soul, a supreme deity, or a malicious ghost peering into his core. He would snarl, attacking the phone with a stone hand axe, striking the glass to liberate or destroy the bizarre doppelganger. That smashing process inevitably cracked the screen, allowing sharp glass shards mixed with liquid crystal fluid to lacerate the hominid's hand, inflicting severe wound infections from tetanus and gangrene bacteria abundant in prehistoric mud. Once again, high technology concluded with the physical destruction of the one who approached it. The deeper one analyzes, the more an immutable law of technological philosophy emerges. Technology does not exist in a social vacuum. It demands a corresponding infrastructural, cultural, linguistic, and economic ecosystem to operate. A mobile phone is not merely a block of silicon and plastic. It is the crystallization of 4 centuries of scientific and technological revolution, from Newton's laws of motion, Maxwell's electromagnetic equations, and Planck's quantum theory to billions of lines of code authored by millions of software engineers across generations. Thrusting such a supreme icon into a world of creatures lacking a written alphabet, incapable of counting beyond their fingers, is equivalent to handing a teleportation machine to beings who only know how to bash tree trunks with stones. This vast cognitive gap creates an unbridgeable abyss. The phone becomes an absurd symbol, a deeply misunderstood sacred object, or cosmic debris fallen from the stars without a single living soul possessing the intellectual capacity to question its origin. Listen closer to the sounds of the jungle at night within this hypothesis. As the phone's alarm finally died out, when the screen sank into eternal darkness, the chirping of crickets, the howling of gelada baboons on the cliffs, and the rustling of pythons sliding across decaying leaf carpets continued as if the information age had never occurred. Prehistoric Earth cared nothing for the fleeting existence of a device from the future. To the green planet of millions of years ago, the mobile phone was nothing more than a special grain of silicon, an inert anomaly no different from a small meteorite fallen from the asteroid belt. Biological evolution obeys its own laws, harsh, persistent, and indifferent to concepts like utility or global connectivity. It required no 5G network to forge new species, no map apps to navigate continental migrations, and certainly no social media to maintain pack cohesion. Every connection in the prehistoric world was forged with blood, genes, sweat, and evolutionary adaptation across tens of thousands of generations, not by electrical currents coursing through nanometer-scale semiconductor microchips. Ultimately, should a time traveler from a distant future return to retrieve that mobile phone, what would they find? They would discover a device partially corroded by organic acids from proto-human saliva and sweat, a screen crisscrossed with scratches from flintstones, and inside its flash memory, perhaps still storing the final photos, videos, and messages of a world that collapsed or forgot its own origins. The contrast between transcendent digital data inside and the damp Pleistocene sediment outside forms a surreal portrait of the paradox of human civilization. We, the humans of the 21st century, pride ourselves on mastering the universe through information technology, believing data is supreme power, and that the phone in our pocket is the master key opening all doors of knowledge and authority. Yet placed within the pure expanse of wild nature, devoid of written language or linear concepts of time beyond day-night cycles and wet-dry seasons, that key becomes entirely useless. It opens no door save for the one leading to distraction-driven doom for innocent creatures daring to touch humanity's first artificial light. Amidst the gloomy, freezing prehistoric night, the mobile phone lay silently beneath the leaf litter, serving as a silent warning from the future sent back to the past. That technology is ultimately just a tool, and if the wielder lacks the cognitive evolution to master it, the tool itself will turn the wielder into a slave, finally burying everything in the ashes of oblivion.